and welcome back to another episode of What the Forensics. My name is Rebecca, and I am joined in person today by the wonderful Journey and Nicole.
Hello! So this week, Nicole will be leading our discussion. She's going to be telling us about the history of the group we all know as the KKK.
Mm-hmm.
So just a note before we get started, Nicole's not going to be going into any specifics on the atrocities that the KKK committed. So there's not really any specific content warnings. However, there is still general conversations about the terror that this group has caused. So definitely just take care after this episode. But with that being said, Nicole, I would love to learn more about the KKK.
Well, I have information for you to share. Before we begin I do want to also just kind of note and make aware the fact that we are three white women discussing this clan or this group, the Ku Klux Klan, which I'll be referring to as either the KKK or just the Klan. So, you know, what I say and what we say is very limited in, you know, the history of it all. So,
and from Canada, too.
And from Canada.
We're not even American.
Yeah, and like they do have some history in Canada, but it's definitely not as prominent as just everything that happened down in the States. So we can only speak so much to it, but that being said, if you have information, if like any listeners have stuff that they want to share, any knowledge, just let us know and we would love to do like a follow-up on that. I tried finding sources that were not whitewashed sources.
Nice.
And
Appreciate
like
it.
I was finding sources from, there was a police officer who I'll talk a little bit more about, a Black police officer. So I got some information from him as well. So the Ku Klux Klan is the oldest and most infamous American hate group that was first created in 1865 by 6 Confederate veterans. They started the Klan at the end of the Civil War in Pulaski, Tennessee, rising during the Reconstruction era. And so the Reconstruction era was like a 12-year period of legal, political, and social recreation at the time that followed the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And it was basically just like allowing Black Americans to be people.
Oh, lovely.
That's fair. Trying to actually let them be a part of society.
Yeah, exactly. And so this Klan, they saw themselves as this like vigilante group who used violent intimidation and just essentially terrorized Black Americans. And it was especially those that were doing well and were progressing because of the Reconstruction. But they also did target any white Americans who supported this Reconstruction, and they prevented both the white Americans in support and the Black Americans from voting and holding political office, and really just being who they could be.
Right.
I didn't know they also like targeted white people who agreed with it or supported it.
Yeah, and it was more than that too. Like you see, well, as we talk about, there's like multiple kind of iterations of the Klan.
Mm-hmm.
And they all kind of like add components and groups into their hatred.
Love that.
Oh.
They just hated a lot of people.
Cool.
And yeah, during the 1868 presidential election, the Klan engaged in violent campaigns. The Klan engaged in violent campaigns of deadly voter intimidation in an attempt to keep the government white. So they basically were just like very hateful towards, like they just controlled voter sway or the voter opinion, I guess.
Okay.
Through violence and just sheer terror.
That's frightening.
Love that.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know, and some of this is just kind of, I don't know if hearsay would be the right word, but some say that the name was chosen, like Ku Klux Klan was chosen because it sounds similar to a rifle being cocked. And then others,
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then others believe that it came from the Greek word kyklos or kyklos, which means circle or cycle. And so you can kind of see that as like a brotherhood circle, but also like encircling Black Americans and like keeping them to what they believed them to be.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then If people don't know who the KKK is, though, they also wore these well-known, elaborate, white pointed hoods, and this was to mask their identities, essentially.
Because they were like really racist and bad, but they didn't want people to know
Yeah.
that they were.
Yeah. Let's not let people know how terrible of a human we are, and we'll just show up to work the next day as if nothing happened.
It's kind of like people hiding behind their screens, but they needed like something physical over their heads.
Physical.
Yeah.
And they would even get like costumes for their horses too.
Really?
Yeah, they had like the white hoods for their horses.
Oh.
Yeah.
Odd. Okay.
Poor horse. He didn't sign up for the KKK.
I know.
No one asked him.
No one asked him at all. But the first leader, and I only say one name because I just don't think they deserve recognition. These guys, they were terrible, terrible people. But the first leader, also known as the Grand Wizard.
Yeah, I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. I don't
that.
support anything about the KKK, but I love that their leader is called the Grand Wizard.
Love their naming convention.
Yeah.
And like the naming, they had a whole kind of glossary of terms for the KKK. And so you had the Grand Wizard, but you also had like the Grand Cyclops was one of them, I think
like,
it was.
One-eyed giant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You also had the Grand, what was it, Grand Giant or something?
The Green Giant.
Yeah. You also had the Imperial Giant. You also have the Imperial Wizard.
What are their like ranks? Like, is the Grand? Well,
so I think the Grand and Imperial may be like interchangeable,
like president, vice president kind of thing.
So the Wizard was like the head of the clan. They were basically, they compared it to like the president of the United States. That's the Grand Wizard.
Okay.
And then you have the Imperial Giant, or possibly the Grand Giant. That was a former Imperial Wizard.
Oh.
So if you were like not demoted, but like stepped down or someone else took your place, you were then the Giant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
Huh.
I don't know why how
why?
they came up with that or figured that was their best. But like you
It almost sounds like they created the KKK out of like Dungeons and Dragons.
Literally. Yeah. And then you have the Hydras, which are the real officers, with exception of the Grand Dragon. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the glossary and their like terms start with K. Like that was like their whole thing, the naming convention. But you had like a conclave, which was a secret clavern meeting. A clavern is a local unit or club, also called den.
Oh.
You had a klecticon, which was initiation fee.
Okay.
So you had to pay like $10 or $13 to be a member.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. Your Chlorion, Clorero was a realm convention.
And so what's a realm?
Oh, so many questions.
Don't know what that is.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Let's see. Realm. Yeah, I gotta say I didn't actually look up what each of the things was.
Honestly, I can't blame you. They have a lot, it seems.
Realm. Okay, wait. The Grand Wizard was to be elected by a majority. There's no way this isn't Dungeons and Dragons. The Grand Wizard was to be elected by a majority of Grand Dragons, and each lower level was elected by a majority of the next lower level of officers. So the dragons were elected by titans, and titans were elected by giants, and etc. And so as soon as the levels, whatever, 3 dominions within a realm for Grand Dragon, 3 provinces within a dominion for Grand Titan. So you had like the 3 groupings within each. Yeah.
I'm glad they chose such ridiculous names because it really just takes the power out of what they do. You're like, oh, Grand Dragon, you're so scary. Why don't you just go play with your titans and your ogres?
Like, and your giants.
Literally.
Yeah.
Doesn't really say. Realms were given a number based on the date of organization of the realm. So I think it was.
So it was like a realm, like a clavern.
Something
Like a
like that.
den.
Yeah.
Seems like
It
it.
seems like it. Yeah, the president of the realm remained the Grand Dragon, and then the other officers were collectively known as the Nine Squires.
Oh,
They were probably fucking nerds.
Sounds like it.
These 6 Confederate soldiers or veterans.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
They were big old nerds. No hate to the modern nerds, because they are not
the modern
anywhere.
nerds are pretty
Cool.
They're cool.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't be nerdy about racist shit.
The 1865 nerds, not cool.
Not
it.
Not cool. So yeah, wide range of words used in their vocab.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, this first leader, this Grand Wizard, he was a well-known Confederate general, and he actually directed a hierarchy of members, and the group supposedly had approximately 550,000 members in
Holy.
1869.
That is
Oh my
way more than
goodness.
I thought.
And they were established in 1865. So within 4 years.
Holy
Wow.
Was that 4 years? Yeah, 4 years. Math. They had that many folks.
That's really alarming. Like the Civil War, just like supposedly. Also, my eyes are watering. I apologize. Supposedly ended slavery. Like,
yeah.
we're all equal now. You can get jobs now, and then like over half the country's like,
Fuck you.
I don't like that. I don't like that very much. Like that's fucked up.
Gonna take things into my own hands.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so this first era of the Klan, they ended up disbanding after a short but violent period. So they then declined in the 1870s, primarily due to the institutionalization of the Jim Crow segregation in the South. And then they basically saw the Jim Crow laws as like their ideologies of white supremacy having been fulfilled. So they were like, okay, my job's
Right.
done.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we wanted.
Yeah.
But there had also apparently been federal legislation that had been passed at the time too, and aimed at prosecuting the Klansmen,
Oh,
banning the group and the use of their disguises or costumes for intimidation purposes.
that's nice.
Mhm.
That's better than I thought happened really early on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then they, like, I didn't read a lot about it, but then they saw that as a, well, you're impeding on my First Amendment, or you're impeding on my rights, so you can't actually do anything about it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The US government in 1871 outlawed the Klan, and it had formally disbanded at this time, but supposedly also existed underground, kind of like some networks here and there for several more decades. So this Grand Wizard, he had also claimed that undesirables within the Klan had tainted the group's ideals
Oh, of
and were
course they have.
driving out the better members, which was also why the Klan kind of fell apart.
Oh, so the not as racist ones were driving out the really racist ones.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because like some of the sources I were saying too were like, not every Klansman was racist, but like ultimately yes they were. But you
Yeah.
had like a degree of how horrible of a human being you were at this
Right.
point. Like, are you lynching men, or are you just like, I don't want to sit next to a black man kind of thing? Like, what
Mhm.
level of racism are you? And so I guess they were also like raising money for other things and like trying to do group stuff that wasn't all like, I don't know, like I'm
Yeah.
not like advocating for them, but like there was a lot of things being like, oh well, they weren't all bad, but
The whole not all men,
Yeah.
not all
Not
KKK.
all- not all
Klansmen.
fuck yeah. So they were the better members, as in the worst members of the group. But by 1915 the KKK then reemerged, and they reemerged by white Protestants near Atlanta, Georgia. However, it wasn't until the end of World War I that the KKK really experienced their national resurgence. And so they went from a few thousand members to over 100,000 in just 10 months.
Oh,
Wow.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
Yeah. And local chapters of the Klan then sprang up across the country, and it had become a national organization at that point.
Wow.
And the founder of this resurgence, apparently he was great at storytelling and he was a great oracle, but he could not organize anything to save his life. So I think that was a big part in where we see kind of the downfall of this second reemergence.
Right.
But this new iteration of the Klan also opposed European immigrants, Indigenous people, Jewish people, Catholics, and other religious groups, in addition to their anti-Black ideological core.
They really ramped it up a notch.
Yeah. So, like, what religion were they? Like,
it was Protestant. They were Protestant. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Weird.
even that was a really big thing. Protestants versus
Catholics, I think it was.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Wild.
So basically, they were like, if you are not a born and bred white Protestant, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like
You don't deserve to
you
be
don't
here.
deserve to live.
Yeah.
Basically, not. I
Damn.
mean, not always to that extent, but you don't deserve the rights of everything.
Oh my goodness.
Damn.
Yikes.
And so, like, at this point after the war, I guess there was growing fear of communism and immigration. And this is what helped broaden the Klan's base throughout the South and into the Midwest as well. So I've always kind of thought the Klan was a very Southern states thing,
Yeah.
but it actually spread through the Midwest and even north up into Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. And so their hatred extended also to liberals and progressives.
Of course it did.
At the time, they were kind of like two different things. So, however you politically want to see that. But in addition to everyone else and these new political parties, they prevented them from attaining wealth, social status, and political power. So they just were stopping them from doing anything.
Yeah.
These Klan members, though, were mostly white Protestant middle-class men who used religion and morality to back up their like crusades and their beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And many Klansmen during this time supposedly also belonged to other orders or other groups, such as the Masonic Order, the Knights of Pythias, and other ones as well.
Okay.
Interesting. So the KKK is like a side gig.
Literally, yeah.
That's really weird.
Wow.
And then they would like pull in ideologies from the KKK into these other groups as well, and they just kind of all mixed and interchanged. Because like the interesting thing is like the Knights of Pythias, I guess they were also another fraternal secret society. But membership was restricted to whites only, but their ideals were of loyalty, honor, and friendship.
No.
Okay.
So nice.
Like it sounds like it could be good, but then
Yeah.
you've
But then
got
it's like whites only.
whites only, and
it's only men.
members from the KKK also part of
Yeah.
it. So I'm like, what kind of friendship are you?
Yeah,
Right? Like their
going
values
for?
on paper kind of sound nice, but then
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, you can only be male and white.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
that's it.
Yep. So those are the Knights of Pythias. And during this time, propaganda was a big thing on selling them, basically. So there was a 1915 film called Birth of a Nation, and this basically just glorified the Klan. Have you guys heard of it?
Yeah.
I've seen clips.
You've
I
seen
obviously
clips?
haven't seen the whole thing.
Really?
I really
But-
want to watch it though. I doubt it's available, but
It just
you
looks
can see
horrific.
clips on YouTube.
Mhm.
Yeah. Not horrific in the sense of like gory. It just like the message is spewing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Didn't the 13th documentary talk about Birth of the Nation?
Yeah, it
Because I'm
did,
pretty sure
because it's
that's
kinda
where I
like-
saw it from.
Yeah, because it's kind of talking about how like it brought back
Yeah.
the Crow
The Jim Crow laws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it kind of sparked
yeah.
like a reignition into that.
Yeah, I didn't even think
Mhm.
about that because we watched that in Michelle's class
I think
I
so,
think
yeah.
so,
I've
yeah.
seen it twice for some reason.
because it's on.
it was good. It
Yeah,
was
oh
very
yeah, I think I
informative.
watched it. I watched it in class, and then
Yeah.
I watched it once after,
Yeah,
just to like understand it, or I watched it with the Forensic Society or
13th. Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or
So-
just the three of us.
it's a Netflix documentary for listeners called 13th, and it is about the 13th Amendment, I believe.
Mhm.
Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the prison systems and whatnot.
It's in our recommendations from a previous episode. It will
Oh.
be in our recommendations for this
Yep.
episode as well.
There's a lot of doubles in our recommendations. But the
Yeah.
stuff you see more than once are like extra recommendations.
Yeah. You should definitely.
really watch and
Yeah.
read those.
So yeah, the Birth of the Nation was a thing and glorified the Klan, basically spreading its popularity and really spewing this like their role of establishing social order. That was their whole thing. Yeah.
Like we asked the KKK to be the ones to establish our social order.
That's who we wanted to do all of this for us. Yeah.
Just all so narcissistic. It's just like, why should you have the power to decide this for other people? Like, what makes you better?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, they were white men. So actually,
true, I guess.
that is their right there, their answer.
I do not accept it.
But the motion picture was very popular among American audiences and was even shown at a private screening at the White House, arranged by Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah,
Woodrow Wilson.
Wow.
That using the R's are
so like the KKK. I don't. Oh, this could be a false statement, but the KKK had support from the president
pretty well. Okay. Like they had a lot of
at that time.
At that time,
maybe just not gonna.
I'm like pretty sure Biden doesn't support that.
Yeah,
he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, he's not as bad as the last one.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a lot of politically important people with like, yeah.
I guess they kind of have to get as big as they were to do the amount of shit that they did and not get like in trouble for it.
Yeah.
They must have some pull.
Oh yeah, they've got quite a few pulls. But this film was also released in Canada in that same year in 1915. And it found success in cities such as Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal primarily. And Alan Bartle, his name is, he is a political scientist and historian. He has been researching the KKK for the past over 25 years. He had said in terms of this that, quote, all the major cities and any town in Canada that had a theater showed the birth of a nation, sometimes half a dozen times over the course of the years between 1915 to 1920.
That's so weird. I guess they're just not making a lot of movies back then.
I don't know. And then he said like in some years, every year after that. So personally, I'm not sure if that means that he showed like if it was half a dozen times every year from 1915 to 1920, or it was like half a dozen times over the span of
that time.
5 years.
Yeah.
So like once a year kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking the former because just the way that it was worded, it seemed like it was a very prominent, successful thing. But that I'm not
like
positive
once
on.
every 2 months for the next 5 years kind of thing. Just like it's at the theater. Yeah.
Hey, remember this movie from 5 years ago? It's still the newest one.
Still the same. Yeah. But yeah, in the early whoa. Sorry.
Word jumble.
I had a stroke there. In the early 1920s, recruiters began to cross the border then into the Maritimes from the States into lower mainland of BC, as well as into southern Ontario. So they were essentially just salesmen tasked with recruiting new members. They would pocket a portion of the member fee, if not all of the member fee. So they're basically just like, we're getting paid to find people to join the clan.
Yeah.
So not only is it terrible, it's also a pyramid scheme.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Find 3 people. Yeah. Find 3 clansmen and get each of those to find 3, and then
you'll be your own boss.
You get to be Grand Dragon.
Start creating their own titles. Oh boy. But yeah, they would just like create a new group in whatever community that they were in at that point. Like if they could find enough, they're like, hey, well, now we have a new group in this chapter. Like we have a new chapter in this town.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got a new realm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love using their words because they're so fucking funny.
Yeah, they are. It's like my Minecraft world is called a realm.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's like, ooh, so scary.
Yeah. But the thing at the time too was like this negative public sentiment in Canada already existed. So it wasn't like, well, for a majority of things, like it wasn't everyone hated everyone, but it wasn't as if the Klan was just appearing and like all of a sudden people started hating people. It's like it was there. They were just adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah,
and
then people were probably like looking for an outlet to be hateful with.
Yeah.
But we didn't have that here in Canada because we
Mhm.
were a little better until they got here.
Until
Well,
well,
we like to think so.
Yeah.
Our racism in Canada is just hidden a lot better
Yeah,
than others.
You're right. I take back what I said before.
Unless you live in Alberta,
Actually,
where I think there's a town in Alberta where they think the KKK like has a still like active like
Oh, damn.
realm
Yeah.
den-ish whatever. And oh my goodness, a few years ago, close to where my family's farm is, they were flying a Nazi flag.
No.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
Yeah, I was like, wow, proud to be an Albertan.
Love my life.
Jesus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, amazing. I can't believe. Yeah, I don't know. I can't believe that still happened.
We're just the south of Canada. Like,
Yeah.
that's just how it is.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, these recruiters also often successfully targeted civic leaders, Protestant ministers, because they were a bunch of Protestant males,
Yeah.
and prominent businessmen. So they were also going after
Because they've got
businesses.
deep pockets.
They've got the deep
Yeah.
pockets, yep. And so in small towns, Klan membership also often helped build business relationships. And so some were very vocal about both their membership with the Klan and their like business support. And so this was seen through their business names. So you had business names such as like Quick Car Wash, spelt with K's.
Oh,
Or you had
yikes.
Cars, each spelt with K's.
Oh my
Like,
god. That one is
Oh my
like
gosh.
shamefully clever. I'm not even gonna lie.
Well, it's definitely going to make me think twice about everywhere that I see that has a K.
like
instead-
Quick Mart or something like that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Like I'm pretty sure there's still like a quick way or something here.
Mhm.
Ooh.
So maybe if you
Ugh.
just see more than 2 Ks, then you gotta question that.
Yeah.
The one is fine.
1K?
but yeah. 2
Yeah,
is
exactly.
getting a little, who knows? 3, it's obvious. But yeah, the Klan saw themselves as kind of these community watchdogs. And so when citizens in their area didn't demonstrate these Klan's ideals, they would supposedly be flogged. And they had like this midnight whipping party.
That's weird.
So a lot of their
Oh,
like
what?
rituals and meetings were held at night because they were seen as like this invisible group. Like they
Like neighborhood watch.
They
Yeah.
didn't want to be recognized personally, and they wanted to be like the invisible watchdogs and enforcement.
Yeah.
Oh.
So a lot of like midnight things, a lot of midnight gatherings. But yeah, and supposedly local law officers were said to have sometimes even just handed criminals over to the KKK. And
no.
occasionally participating in some of the punishments towards criminals. And
I'm unfortunately not surprised. Like I would be very surprised if there was no one on that force involved in the KKK. They probably just like they were like, "Oh no, my night shift is tonight, but there's a flogging."
There's a flogging. I gotta get to the whipping party.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's messed up.
And so in 1925, Klan members and followers had staged a march on Pennsylvania Ave in Washington, D.C., where nearly 40,000 Klansmen paraded down this street.
That's
Wow.
scary.
Yeah. And at this point, the Klan supposedly had as many as 4 million members. And some sources say this could have even reached 8 million at this time.
How big was the population of America at this time?
Yeah.
That's an excellent question.
I had no idea that the Klan was so big. Like I knew it was big, but I wasn't expecting
115 million.
millions.
Yeah.
How many millions?
150, almost 116 million in 1925,
Wow.
give or take.
Wow.
Oh,
So up to 8 million of those.
that is crazy. Like that's a
Yikes.
big number.
Yeah. That's not I don't like that percentage math.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, upwards of 8 million by mid 1920s, and in some states, members even had substantial political power. So they could maybe not be president, but like there were grand wizards running for Senate. There were grand wizards, like one of the grand wizards I think what it was said was he originally tried running as a Democrat,
Right.
didn't get the votes, so then changed to Republican and then got the votes there.
I was gonna say, I would
Yeah.
hope that Democrats would definitely not support a KKK member.
Yeah.
Was it well known that he was a Grand Wizard, like outside of the KKK community?
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
was it really?
Oh, right, because I forgot they're proud of this.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So they still
A
wear
lot of the Grand
masks.
Wizards, a lot of the like higher ups were very proud of
and
who they were.
outspoken.
Yeah, and outspoken. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yuck.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And so the revival of the Klan in the 20s was in part a reflection of society undergoing the effects and changes of not only industrialization, but urbanization and immigration as well. And so Klansmen thought, as you may have heard in the past or recently, that Asian and European immigrants were taking jobs away from white Americans.
Yeah, that's coming back.
Yeah.
In full swing.
I don't think that's ever left.
No.
I don't.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
No.
We just find society just finds a new problem to push on to
Yeah.
Minorities,
immigration
yeah.
being the
Mhm.
issue.
Yeah.
Yep. And so they believed that they were also diluting, quote, the racial purity
Of the Aryans.
of the
Yeah.
American society. So it just every generation
Yeah.
has some version of this, and it's just as horrific as the last.
Do we know how Hitler felt about the KKK? Because it kind of sounds like they might be buddies.
That is actually such a good question.
Because
Well, so I don't know about Hitler himself, but there
Mhm.
was a lot of overlap by the Second World War with neo-Nazis
Yeah.
and
Nazi
sharing
sympathizers.
ideologies with the
Right.
KKK and kind of bridging the gap between the two of them.
that makes a lot of sense, especially if, like you were saying, the KKK didn't like Jewish people, when they restarted in the early 1900s.
Yeah. So just quickly on that though, there's a Reddit forum, relationships between Germany and the KKK during World War II. Someone says, you're in luck. This exact question regarding the Liberators poster and Nazi attitudes towards the KKK and Jim Crow has been answered by a friendly historian.
I love Reddit when there are friendly experts in their field that are like, I'm just so
Yeah.
happy to share.
I'm so glad you asked. I would love to tell you about this.
Not gonna lie, a lot of writing, so I will look into this and we will
Okay.
post about it.
So
Okay,
Because
fair.
I will not have an answer within the next 2 to 5 seconds.
Okay.
fair.
But I do believe there was probably some overlap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see why there wouldn't be,
Yeah.
right?
I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so people of power, racial purity. Also in 1925, the national headquarters of the Canadian KKK was established in Toronto, Ontario. They advertised themselves as a social organization, and in just a year's time, the Canadian Klan had become the largest and fastest growing social organization in the country, according to this historian Alan
Oh.
Bartley.
Wow.
Yep.
Gross.
Yeah.
Is it Bartley? Did I get Bartle? Sorry.
Bartle.
Bartley. Nope. I forgot the Y the first time around. It's
okay.
Alan Bartley.
Okay.
But yeah, rallies and Klan meetings were held in places like Kingston and Belleville, London, Ontario,
No.
and Hamilton, Ontario, which is just beside. Rebecca has family in London. I have family just outside Hamilton, so it's a little close to home.
Yeah, I don't like that.
a
I'm
little
not
close to
ugh.
home.
Yeah, that's icky.
And this is where 5,000 to 20,000 people were showing up to these meetings.
Oh boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Slightly off topic, we're talking about London, Ontario. The Church of Scientology just opened a church there.
Oh.
And
nice.
they've been doing opening weekend barbecues
Come
and
check us
stuff.
out.
Yeah.
We'll
so
give you free food.
wouldn't recommend.
Oh.
Also scared of talking about Scientology because there's some powerful people.
I know. I really want to do an episode, but I'm like, it's way too prevalent.
I know,
in the
I'm like,
world
are they
to
going to
get
come
shut
after
down.
us?
Yeah. They will find a way to shut us down.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But yeah. So cross burnings were held all across southern Ontario, southern Alberta, and in the Maritimes.
I hate that so much.
Yep.
Yikes.
Around this time, different religious and civic groups, though, had launched campaigns aiming to educate Americans about the crimes and atrocities that the KKK were
good.
committing.
That's good.
Mhm.
And how they were treating, and the way they, I don't know what I said there.
You know what? It happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Around this time, different religious and civic groups had launched campaigns aiming to educate Americans about the crimes and atrocities the Klansmen had been committing and kind of like the pain and terror that they were causing on these people.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And so the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, they were at the forefront of this too. So they were really
I've
trying
heard
to
about
educate.
them.
Yeah. And so additionally, some ministers, Catholic priests, and Jewish rabbis had come forward to condemn the organization. So there
good.
really were a bunch of people coming together at this point being like, hey, this is not good. We
Yeah.
should do something about this.
That is so fair.
Yeah.
I'm glad there were groups coming out against them.
Yeah. And so this anti-Klan activism really did help the decline of the organization and the membership drastically in the 20s, in addition, again, to internal battles. So I guess just like everyone wanted either a say or they all wanted power. And so they were just like a bunch of dudes fighting it out, trying to, get on top of the, that's not how I want to word that. Just like be better than the next, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess there were also a whole bunch of newspaper exposés that had come out about the Klan, and so like it was becoming more public about shit that was happening, and so this helped decline and reduce the Klan's influence. But unfortunately, in around and during the 1960s, the Klan arose for a third time.
Wow.
This time in opposition of the civil rights movement and in an attempt to preserve segregation.
Wow.
So a resurgence was also seen in Canada as well, and this was in part of the official adoption of multiculturalism, which I never realized we had like an official adoption.
Yeah, I thought people just kind of gradually were like, we're also just humans.
Yeah. We're just a multicultural country. Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess there was a lot of talk within the Klan about how multiculturalism was a form of assimilation and was predicting the erasure of the white race within Canada. So they advocated for all minorities to return to wherever they came from.
Because obviously everyone that's not white can't be from Canada. Yeah. No, that's messed up. And
it's something that we hear even today, which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so throughout the second and third eras of the Klan, the demographics of the country had shifted drastically, though, because many Black Americans were leaving these southern states, moving north and seeking not only economic prosperity and social opportunities, but they were also obviously hoping to just get the fuck out of Dodge from these Klansmen, because like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah. Like it's so unfortunate, but you can see even today the effect that had, because like with like so much Black people moving out of the South, now the South is still like the most Republican white kind of area. Like they're still very I'm gonna say old-timey down there. I don't know how else to say it. They got stronger opinions about some not great things down there.
Yeah. And it was interesting. I had briefly read too about I think it was epigenetics and how like the trauma that these communities and Black Americans are facing through like all of these things is just like it's passed down. It's a generational thing. And so like to stay in southern states and to consistently be exposed to this hatred and violence, like
it's not good long term for even like your future family.
Yeah. Let alone currently. So like no matter what you do, it's just not a great outcome, unfortunately. So they got out of Dodge. They tried to go north. Unfortunately, the Klan was also kind of finding its way north. But at the end of the Vietnam War in 1975, again, several returning American soldiers became well known within the Klan. So I feel like a lot of the Klan was like founded on veterans.
Traumatized
Yeah,
veterans.
I wouldn't even say if like they were all traumatized in that
Fair.
sense, but like they were all white veterans that
Yeah.
were like,
Yeah.
this is my way of expressing my hatred. So
And they had been fighting people of color for however long.
Yeah.
Right? Especially in the Vietnam War, where you're like,
Yeah.
okay, you're kind of bred to hate Vietnamese people.
Yeah, like they've been trained for years to see people of color as a bad thing.
Yeah, and then if there is like trauma as a part of that,
Yeah.
they like, oh, this Vietnamese person killed my best friend. I
Yeah.
now hate all
All
Vietnamese
Vietnamese,
people,
yeah.
right? Like it just kind of carries on.
Yeah. And so at this time too, they, as they were becoming well known, the ideological gaps as well began to close, like I had said, between like neo-Nazi and Klan groups during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the organization of this third era of Klan was weakened due to the series, I guess there were court cases that had come about,
Oh.
and they were aiming to bankrupt the Klan.
Oh,
essentially.
wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
good. Nice attempts.
And again, there was internal fighting because dudes will be dudes and they all want power. And government infiltrations had started to happen, which I will talk about one of those. Would it be government? I guess like a police infiltration.
Okay.
And so this led to smaller, less organized Klan chapters. So you didn't have all of the widespread 40,000 members, but you did get like dispersal in smaller quantities around.
Kind of doing their own thing.
Kind of doing their own thing, yeah. And so throughout the 1980s, leaders had been convicted of criminal activities and many members actually had gone to jail. In terms of today, though, it's nearly impossible to estimate how many active members there are since the Klan insists on being this invisible empire.
Yeah.
It is relatively fair to assume, I'd say, that they're not attracting as many new members as they once did. That's not to say that they aren't, though, because
Right.
there are still active clans in the United States.
Which is so crazy
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Like, we always talk with them like they're a thing of the past, but they're
Yeah.
literally not.
they're
It's
not.
still going on today.
Yeah.
And so by the early 2000s, remnants of the Klan began to resurface. However, this time a lot of it was online. So they're finding like new avenues of finding membership and
Yeah.
spreading their ideologies. In June of 2019, 2 international neo-Nazi groups were added to Canada's list of outlawed terrorist organizations,
Mhm.
Blood and Honor and then Combat 18.
Mhm.
However, the KKK is still not included on this list.
That makes no
Really?
sense.
And we'll talk about this because I have some
Mhm.
points on all of
Yeah.
that because it is so mind-boggling. But then in July of 2020, Tennessee State Capitol Commission voted to remove the bust of the first leader of the KKK that was in the Capitol building
Oh my god.
What? Holy shit.
in 2020.
That only happened in 2020?
And it was removed in July of 2021.
No.
And it's been placed in a museum, the Tennessee
No.
State Museum.
Ugh.
Okay.
Have you heard about? I don't remember where this happened, but it's in the States somewhere. I think it was a Confederation leader. You remember how like a lot of statues were being torn down for
Yeah.
good reason.
Mm-hmm.
There was a case in the States, I think somewhere southern, where they've just gotten approval to put the statue back up.
Are you serious?
Because so many people of the town were so mad about this Confederate statue being taken down that
What?
they rallied to get it put back up.
Taxpayer
my
dollars
goodness.
hard at work.
Wow.
Love that.
Yeah.
Don't get it. I don't get it.
It's a statue. I agree with taking it down.
Yeah,
I don't, but I just stupid.
we don't
Like,
need
why
it.
do you care that much?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm really
Like,
yeah.
Do you go and pray at it every day? Is that insensitive of me to say? Like, what are
But,
you
like,
doing with the statue?
yeah, how does it affect your day-to-day life?
That the
Yeah.
statue's no longer in the town square.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. Whole bunch of whites, I assume.
Yeah.
Yeah. As of 2023, though, there were approximately 10 KKK hate groups in the U.S.
Wow.
More on like the southern mid east area from the
Okay.
map that I was seeing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so now that we've kind of covered a bit of the history. I know there was a lot of it. And there's still so much more too. Like, I didn't go into how actually terrible they were as a group because the stuff that they had committed was just horrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrific. I did want to chat about why they aren't formally considered a terrorist group.
Yes, please, because I'm pretty sure I signed like a petition in around 2020, like when everyone was being like really active about it.
Yep.
Like trying to make them into a terrorist group, and I'm like, why
aren't they?
did that ever stop?
Yeah. And so considering this, that they aren't formally considered one, but so the FBI defines domestic terrorism as violent criminal acts committed by individuals and or groups to further ideological goals stemming from domestic influences such as those of political, religious, social, racial, or environmental nature. So that screams KKK to me.
It does.
In my opinion.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, like I feel like that would be a very shared opinion in that sense.
Yep.
I think like literally every one of those points hit them somehow.
Yeah. And so groups like ISIS, though, and Al-Qaeda are listed as terrorist organizations, but this is kind of because they are international foreign groups that threaten U.S. security. And so mechanisms exist to designate foreign terrorist groups. However, there's actually currently nothing in place to designate domestic terrorist groups, from what I could find. Yeah.
Do you think that the fact that the KKK is mostly white also goes into play with that? Because
100%.
like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, they're not white people who are terrorists again.
Yeah. I have a little quote from, I read some forums because the internet is great for these things. And I straight up was like, why isn't the KKK a terrorist group? And there were a lot of really good discussions and feeds about people's viewpoints and like educated and backed up answers to that. And so I've got a couple of those that I'll go over. I think it's on the next slide or 2 slides from now. But so the federal government apparently doesn't have the ability to designate domestic groups as terrorist organizations.
Is that in the States or here too?
Definitely in the States. I would assume also in Canada, though.
Okay, because I know
maybe
for work, like a few months ago, I was looking at the Canadian international or Canadian terrorist organization list, and I did see groups. And I'm wondering because these are technically American groups, so technically to us are international, but on there, like the Proud Boys are on there, and QAnon. I don't know if QAnon was on there, but the Proud Boys was.
I actually have.
Yeah, because that was about the same time as the KKK petition. The Proud Boys had like a resurgence, or they were huge at that time. And so they had become a terrorist group, and everyone was like, if they're a terrorist group, why aren't they KKK?
Exactly. Yeah. So that is super weird because, I mean, Canada, like, again, I don't know about the States because you're talking about domestic stuff in the States, but to us, Proud Boys are international.
The Proud Boys are on here. I have it up now,
Like
I
in
have
the
it
States?
on Canada's.
Okay.
I have the currently listed entities, and I'll source them too because I did look at them because KKK is not on it.
Yeah.
Proud Boys. They've got Combat 18, which we had talked about. I briefly mentioned.
They've got a lot on there.
A lot.
Like, there's a way more terrorist groups than I thought there were.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Something I've never heard of too.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah.
Would the KKK not be on our terrorist list because they're not really international because there have been Canadian chapters of it?
Well, but the Combat 18's Canadian, I believe.
Oh, I've never heard of that before.
I think they're Quebec.
Oh, okay.
Blood and Honor is an international neo-Nazi network whose ideology is derived from the National Socialist doctrine of Nazi Germany. Just kidding. They were founded in the UK, so not Canadian. There was a Quebec-based one, though. Remember, like, shit was happening in Quebec, and they were really getting at it. But, I don't know then. Let me see if... Okay, well, searching Canada on a Canadian site isn't the easiest. International Relief Fund for the Afflicted and Needy of Canada.
The which, sorry?
International Relief Fund for the Afflicted and Needy in Canada. IRFAN,
That's a terrorist group?
supposedly. I've never heard of
Oh.
them. Oh, yeah, and then like Atomwaffen, Atomwaffen, I think it was. They were founded in the States, though, but I think those were the ones in Quebec. I don't know. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, apparently there's just a lot of terrorist groups that we don't know about.
Amazing.
A lot of them. But anyways, this being said, if the federal government apparently doesn't have the ability to designate these groups, this kind of raises the question about who?
Yeah, I was gonna ask. I'm like, if the federal government can't do it,
Who's making that decision?
Like, are we relying on the UK, like their group, to say?
Yeah,
it's
because like
know.
within Canada, the next level would be like provincial. So like, is there like a state one that like each state has to declare the KKK a terrorist group, and then the federal government's like,
oh,
yes,
the majority says, so I guess we should.
Yeah.
I don't know. But around, I think it was like when George Floyd was murdered, there was a whole lot that came about that. But U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, she had questioned the FBI on why domestic terrorism labels aren't used for white supremacist groups. And basically they just came back and said, well, the law prevents labeling U.S. groups as terrorists because of severe civil liberties concerns.
So I'm pretty sure it's just because people,
the First Amendment.
The First Amendment, they're
like,
going to get uppity about
matter.
that.
Like, I'm very thankful that Canada doesn't have a freedom of speech law.
Yeah.
Because it saves us from so much of that bullshit.
It's just abuse.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Like, I've, like, something my parents, all right, I think I heard it from my parents. I don't know where I heard it, but it's like, it is freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of consequences.
Exactly.
Of the speech.
Yeah.
Like, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
But someone can still punch you in the face if they don't agree with that.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so following George Floyd's murder and the subsequent protests, Trump had actually tweeted that he was preparing to formally label anti-fascist activists, Antifa, is that how you pronounce it? Antifa, as a terrorist organization, saying that the far-left group was responsible for many of the violent protests. However, this raises questions about whether he even had the legal authority to do so.
Yeah.
In my opinion, like, if he could, what would this mean then for labeling other domestic groups?
Yeah, totally.
Like the KKK. Why would you label Antifa and not the KKK at that point?
Is Antifa good or bad?
It's like, it's seen as like a super alt-left kind of organization.
I genuinely don't know a lot about it.
I don't know a lot about it. They supported Black Lives Matter, which was really hated by the right side, which then associated them with, they said like they were terrorists and stuff, but I don't actually know how bad they are.
That's why, because like they were I remember hearing them a lot about the Black Lives Matter movement, but did I say that right?
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. I thought I put an L at M. Yeah, anyway, I thought I confused it. So in the Black Lives Matter movement, but then later on, I'm hearing all these negative things, and I'm like, what even are you?
Yeah.
So I guess, though, terrorism experts, I don't know how you become a terrorism expert, but they exist. They responded saying that Antifa is a decentralized movement, and so they're not a traditional organization with a designated leadership.
That is true.
So
I think
it's
they
like,
don't have chapters or anything. It's just
yeah.
kind of like, you can say like, I'm Antifa, like, just I don't like fascism. I don't want fascism to happen. Oh no, I'm Antifa. I'm anti-fascist.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, and then I think they're considered an extremist, but on one end of the extremist kind of left and right side of things. But according to research conducted by the Anti-Defamation League, right-wing groups, including white supremacy groups, are responsible for more murders on U.S. soil than any other extremist group to this day,
I fully believe it.
with 3/4 of extremist killings over the past decade having been carried out by right-wing extremists.
Really?
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, wait. Sorry. I was just thinking about the whole domestic terrorism thing.
Yep.
How can we have like Timothy McVeigh?
Mhm.
How? Because he was the Oklahoma City bomber.
Mhm.
He's labeled as a domestic terrorist.
Mhm.
How can he be like? We don't know the answers to this, but if anyone else does, how can he be labeled a domestic terrorist and not the KKK? Because
I'm curious if it's something different to do with like he's an individual acting on like an individual ideology,
yeah,
whereas the KKK is like a group of people all collectively working towards one thing. So I guess they worry that it could be like more dangerous because there's like thousands of people being like, oh, like what is like whatever is bad is so bad I need to go bomb it. Like,
yeah,
I guess it's like 1,000 bomb threats versus one, but
Yeah.
that's also speculation. I don't know the answer
yeah.
either.
I have no idea.
But yeah, American Civil Liberties Union also noted that Trump's announcement just goes to show that, quote, terrorism is an inherently political label easily abused and misused, end quote.
Mhm.
Which is like very true. You can just
Yeah.
throw that out there and
Yeah,
cause panic and terror to begin with.
absolutely.
Or add to it. But going back to what you were saying about whatever you were saying, that I had talked about the online forums.
Okay, yeah.
The online forums.
Wow, we kind of took a rabbit hole there. Oh my goodness.
I was like, whatever that was. Some of the forums I read were talking about how groups like the KKK are basically, like we had said, protected under the First Amendment, which guarantees not only the right of peaceful assembly, which I would argue the KKK was not very peaceful when they were assembling.
Yeah, their midnight floggings aren't very peaceful.
But it's also the right to express opinions despite how shitty and unpopular their opinions may be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One response, though, was worded quite well, with the commenter saying that they aren't considered a terrorist group because America is a white-based country that has historically exploited the labor, land, and the resources of not only Black people, but anyone with brown skin. And I would say with anyone of color at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But predominantly Black and brown skinned people. If the government were to recognize the KKK as a terrorist group, it would be an admission of guilt for all the genocide, sexual assault, and corruption that was directly planned, monitored, and executed by the KKK, which has manifested into government positions and policies we see today.
Right.
Yeah, wow.
So we are just like...
That's like a mic drop kind of moment right there.
We're just going off of shit that... Yeah.
Yeah, it totally kind of...
I don't know.
Would be an admission of guilt, though, because like there was people in power, part of the KKK, who got there out of them fear-mongering people at like the polls.
Yeah.
It's kind of like opening Pandora's box. Like if we admit that what the KKK did was wrong, then we also have to take responsibility for like the Tuskegee experiments and whatever, and everything else that we've done.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to do that, but it's not on us.
Like, that's too much work, too much paperwork.
Yeah. Oh, the paperwork. Yeah. They hate the paperwork. But yeah, a retired FBI bomb tech had also commented and mentioned that the FBI aren't the ones to actually determine what organizations are labeled as domestic terrorists.
Oh.
So if not the FBI and if not the president, my question is who then, as we kind of talked about? Like, who is making those distinctions?
My next guess would be Homeland Security, but they're not.
That's still kind of federal, is it not, though?
Yeah, it is. And like, I guess like Homeland Security only deal with international stuff too, don't they? I don't know.
Well, I feel like
I don't know.
They would also deal with domestic terrorism. Like,
actually, yeah, because isn't that who Snowden was working with?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like we should know this. We did an episode. I just can't remember.
I retained almost nothing of our episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't either.
Once we finish the recording, gone.
Yeah, very much so.
Is he considered a domestic terrorist?
Snowden? Yeah, he is. That's why he's still in Russia.
That's what I'm getting at. It's like, why can individuals be considered domestic terrorists and not groups?
He is considered one because he told government secrets that the government didn't want the public knowing, that the
Ain't
government was
doing that.
taking all of our
Yeah.
data, and the government was like, you told our secrets, that's treason, that's
Yeah.
mean. It's like, okay, but I'm
That's
really
mean.
happy he told us about
Yeah.
that. Like,
Yeah.
That's kind of what you want.
yeah, but no, he's a terrorist because he told the American public that their own country was spying on them.
Yeah.
See, like the bar for terrorism is so low unless you're in the KKK.
Yeah.
Like
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're not a terrorist group, but he had also mentioned that members could be charged under the RICO Act, I guess, which is the
Oh.
Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Okay.
And a
Um,
song by Drake.
yeah. If crimes were committed for the KKK's benefit and or enough people breaking the law claimed that the KKK encouraged them to commit such acts.
All right, but then they have to
Interesting.
prove that it was the KKK, and everyone would be like, "No, it wasn't."
It
Yeah.
wasn't them, it was just
Yeah.
a solo actor.
Yeah.
But then they could be a terrorist.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
but just
But
not
they-
under the
no.
KKK.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But yeah, that's kind of all I had for why they aren't really a terrorist group. But I did also want to talk about a bit about Ron Stallworth.
Yes.
Do you know of him?
Yes, I
Okay.
do. Have you seen Black Klansman?
No, but I listened to his audiobook.
That would be so good.
It's on the Libby app. So I
Okay.
recommend it. It's a 6-hour listen. I listened to like 1.15 speed.
Okay.
But it was like, I highly recommend it. I'll put it in our sources because he narrates it too.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
cool.
So you're hearing it like from him and him like
That's really
Wow.
cool.
he's telling you this story. It was amazing. I highly recommend. It was so good. But for those of you that don't know Ron Stallworth, he was the first African American and youngest detective in the Colorado Springs Police Department who had gone undercover and infiltrated the KKK in the late 1970s.
Wow.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I highly recommend his stuff. He's got Black Klansman, and then he's got
KK Klansman.
Black K Klansman. There's a movie adaptation that's come out about it as well.
It's so good.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Highly recommend. I've seen it like 5 times.
Really?
It's so
Okay.
funny.
It's on my list. I'm
They
gonna
do
watch it.
really well, and Adam Driver's in it.
Yeah.
I'm just excited for Adam Driver.
Okay. And he's got another one about a mob, I think, or something like that. But basically, Ron Stallworth had come across an ad in the local newspaper that was asking for those interested in learning more about the KKK to reach out and, join
Just
or
check it
like
out.
find some more information about it.
Yeah.
So that's exactly what Ron did. However, as he submitted his like interest undercover, he used his real name, but he did pose as a white man. So like any communication that they had wasn't face to face. It was
Yeah.
like over the phone and stuff like that. He used an undercover because he was in the police department. They created basically an undercover case for this and an operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had a PO box address and a phone number for communications. He figured he would maybe receive some brochures, some information, maybe a magazine telling him more about this community. Wasn't the case. It basically was like he was just a Klansman then.
Oh.
So it turned into a deep undercover case where he was the voice of Ron Stallworth, the Klansman, and then his co-worker Chuck, I forget his last name. He was an undercover narcotics cop. He was the face. So he was like the white alter ego Ron Stallworth.
Mm-hmm.
So any interaction in person that he had, he was mic'd up, and then Black Ron Stallworth would be like in a car listening in kind of thing.
Okay.
But he actually hadn't heard back after a little while when reaching out to this classified ad. So Ron called up the Grand Wizard at the time, basically, and was like, hey, did you get my application? And so surprisingly, the Grand Wizard did answer the phone. They were chatting. They talked about their shared racial values. And so he was just going off about how like terrible Black people and Jewish people were and all of these things, like obviously really trying to sell himself as this racist white man.
Yeah.
Worthy of being the Grand Wizard.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And so Duke, the Grand Wizard at the time, he had said he would personally see to it that Ron's application to become a Klans member would be processed And so in a short amount of time after that, Ron received his official KKK membership card, complete with Duke's signature. So here's this black
Wow.
police officer walking around with a KKK card.
It's hilarious.
And yeah,
If I remember correctly, and I feel like they wouldn't make this just an embellishment for the movie. But the cop, his partner that went undercover for him, was Jewish as well.
yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm
so
pretty
it's
sure,
like
yeah.
double whammy.
Yeah,
for the
literally.
KKK.
And like I highly recommend listening to the audiobook, reading it, and then even the movie too, because I'm sure it's very on par for most of
Yeah.
it. There's just a lot kind of in between. Like it was a 9-month investigation, and I can't go into every detail of that.
Yeah.
But to like hear it from Ron and to see kind of what happened and how he created the investigation and case and kind of like got footing in the police department because of it was amazing. But at one point, kind of nearing the end of the investigation, Stallworth had actually been placed as Duke's personal entourage. So he was
That's
coming.
hilarious.
He was going to be in
Wow.
the city for, I think it was a Klan meeting. I don't know. He was in the city, and I guess there were death threats made. And so he was scared for his personal safety, contacted the police department, and they're like, okay, well, I guess we'll give you an entourage. So they gave him Ron Stallworth. And so he was scared that it was going to jeopardize the whole investigation, right?
Yeah.
Because he gave his real name. He didn't
Yeah.
think anything of it at the time.
And
Yeah.
he's the one on the phone.
He's the
all
one
the
on the
time.
phone.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to on the phone too, all the other police officers, not all, but a good majority of them were like, well, they're going to know it's a black man talking. And Ron's like, well, how does a black man sound then?
Yeah.
Enlighten me, please.
Yeah.
Kind of
How are they
thing.
gonna know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. But yeah, because he was saying, well, if I'm using my real name and I'm Ron Stallworth, Klansman, but also Colorado Springs officer, plainclothes officer Ron Stallworth,
Mm-hmm.
he knows my name, he knows my voice. I've personally chatted with Duke over the phone. Like,
Yeah. Oh wow.
Yikes.
what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
I also think it's hilarious that the police department assigned the leader of the KKK,
Yeah.
the Grand Wizard,
Yeah.
Black
a
man?
black security officer.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love it.
I think that's hilarious.
And something small too that he was chatting about. I'm off to my paper notes now because I was
Okay.
doing this probably when I shouldn't have been researching it, but that's fine. He got a photo with Duke. So basically, I forget exactly the circumstances which led to the photo being taken, but he had Chuck or someone take the photo. And originally he was going to do like his arms around Duke and this guy. The photo doesn't exist if you're looking for it.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking
Yeah,
for.
unfortunately doesn't exist.
that's exactly what I was
so
looking for.
He basically was like, on 3, take the photo. And so as 3 went up, he put his arms around both the Grand Wizard and this other high figure in the KKK. And so it was a Polaroid image. Duke was not happy about this,
Oh
but
man.
being the speedy man that he was, Ron snatched the photo and basically was like, if you lay a hand on me, I'm charging you with assault of a police officer, and kept the photo.
Amazing.
I
And
love
kept
that.
the photo. Unfortunately, he said it has since been lost. Like, it has been however many years. It's moved departments. It's in a
Yeah.
box somewhere.
Yeah.
But with it being a Polaroid, it's not accessible at the time being.
Fair.
But some other kind of crazy facts were there was a list of names given about like Klansmen or people in the area, something like that. And on it were 2 NORAD personnel. Do you
Really?
know what NORAD is?
No.
They track Santa.
They track Santa. Yeah.
Oh.
But they're
track
like
Santa.
the airspace defense. So they like look to see if everything in airspace is as it should be.
Okay, because I was gonna be like, Santa, if you're watching this with kids, shut it off. Santa isn't real.
You never
What
watched
do you mean they
NORAD
track
Santa
Santa?
Tracker?
I'm sure I have, and like I
Every
understand
Christmas.
that, but like there's
It's
like
the
it's
no-
not
yeah.
true.
Yeah, it was.
No,
Okay.
it's just a thing for
It's
kids.
just a thing for kids.
Yeah,
It
okay.
looks really professional and like it looks
Okay.
real.
Yeah. How long it takes for Santa to get to each country.
Yeah,
how
because
many...
we've like looked at things like
Okay,
that,
yeah.
but I'm like,
It's
Santa's
not,
not
Santa's
real.
not real,
So
you know
like,
that, right? You know that.
But it's the North American Aerospace Defense Command.
Okay.
And so apparently there were NORAD officers, officials with top security clearance level status that were
Oh.
KKK members. And so that was not good.
No,
Yeah, not
that's
good at
not
all.
good.
They were quickly removed and moved to the North Pole. Speaking of Santa,
Whoa.
because that was like the farthest, most secluded, whatever station that they had.
Wow.
My God.
I don't really know what happened to them after the fact.
That's kind of hilarious, actually. So they
Yeah.
didn't fire them. They were like, just go work in the North Pole.
Yeah,
You won't share the secrets up there.
Yeah, I don't really know 100% what happened, but it was not great.
Yeah.
Weird.
But basically nearing the end too, Ron had met with the chief of police, basically just summarizing what their investigation brought about and what they've learned from it. Because at this point, there were members in the Klan, like, they saw potential in Ron Stallworth, the Klansman. So they wanted Ron to be like the head of the chapter, basically, in
Oh.
Colorado Springs. Like, they really were pushing him to be a higher up. And you can only say no so many times, right?
Yeah.
Before they're like,
they're suspicious.
what's going on?
Yeah, like you wanted to join in the first place. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't you want to be a big member?
Why
of the
don't you want the
KKK?
notoriety of it? So basically, what he had brought forth to the chief was that valuable intelligence had been gathered on two of the most extreme racial hate groups, the Klan and Posse Comitatus. And so Posse Comitatus, even though I didn't mention it at all, he does talk about it a lot in his book, but it was basically just like a common law group of people, and they thought that they could enforce law themselves, I believe.
Oh,
And
okay.
it was just very racially motivated and terrible, not great people.
Common theme.
Common theme, yeah. Two, the discovery of their infiltration of U.S. military installations, the U.S. Army and Air Force and NORAD. So they had basically found that there were quite a few KKK members in these military operations.
It's probably
Yeah.
another reason they don't want to name them a domestic terrorist group,
Yeah.
is because they're still so heavily involved.
Yeah. Three, it was the prevention of Black militant groups, the Black Panther Party, and Black Muslims from coming to Colorado Springs and merging their verbal venom with the Klans, thereby negatively affecting our community's social dynamic. So basically, the Klan had prevented the Black Panther Party and the Black Muslims from coming into Colorado Springs. So that was another kind of evidence point to the investigation. It was the prevention of at least 2 occasions the terrorist acts of Klan cross burnings. So I guess they had found out information through their undercover work about possible burning, like cross burnings that they had put a stop to.
Oh, wow.
And then there was also threats of bombings that never ended up happening, but
Okay.
that was
That's
a thing.
good.
Yeah. And then 5 was national impact that they were having from an intelligence standpoint that was proving beneficial to police agencies and private entities throughout the country. So basically, they were just learning a lot about
which is
these
amazing.
hate groups. Yeah,
Right.
which is
Yeah.
incredible. He had told the police chief about how this individual wanted Ron to assume the role of the leader of the local Klan chapter. And he wanted to, I don't know if he himself wanted to accept the offer. I don't
That'd be
think he did,
hilarious.
but like,
Yeah.
it was like, let's do this because we can learn more.
Yeah.
Like, the department could work around potential entrapment issues by working in close consultation with local DA's office.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing with undercover work, is like entrapment. Like, you can't put yourself in a situation to have people do something and then arrest them for it, if that makes sense. So
Right.
with
You
him,
can't cause the
Yeah.
arrest,
yeah.
the crime to happen.
So
Yeah.
if he was the leader of this Klan chapter, he can't host a cross burning
Yeah.
and arrest everyone that comes.
Right.
You know what I
That's
mean?
true. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then the other kind of point for why it could be a good idea was the window of opportunity to gather further intelligence on the Klan and then, by extension, others in Colorado hate groups from a position of leadership. So this was very unprecedented, once in a lifetime opportunity that they really wanted to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The chief didn't want to discuss the issue
Yeah.
in any sense. So
Of course they didn't.
Yeah.
Of course they didn't.
The chief's position on the matter was for Ron to immediately shut down the investigation, cease contact with the Klan, and the sergeant was ordered to have undercover phone numbers changed. Ron was ordered to not respond to any Klan mail sent to the PO address, and he wanted Ron Stallworth, the Klansman, to completely disappear and no longer exist.
Oh.
Oh,
That's
I
kinda
feel
suspicious.
like
Yeah.
I feel like he's got some ins with the Klan.
Yeah. So why, you may ask? Ron doesn't really have an exact answer, but his theories are that the chief was in charge of public relations.
No way.
The chief was in charge of public relations for the Klan?
No, sorry, not the Klan, but like
Okay.
the Colorado Springs Police Department.
Oh, okay.
So he was fearful that if word got out about
Okay.
CSPD's officers were sworn Klansmen, they'd have a PR disaster.
Yeah.
That's really fair.
That's kind of fair.
Basically saving his ass in that sense.
That's
Yeah.
really fair.
Ron was told to destroy all evidence that indicated that the CSPD was conducting an investigation into the KKK. Ron kind of argued, though, that like all proper steps were taken. Everything he did, he had the sergeant's approval for. And he voiced that by taking the steps that the chief was advocating for, so by destroying everything and removing this alias of him, this would imply that the intelligence unit had done something wrong
Yeah.
when they, in fact, hadn't. They had done
Yeah.
everything by the book to that point.
Yeah.
And so he had began to slowly start shredding documents, kind of like the lesser important of them.
Yeah.
But then as the sergeant left the office kind of for an extended period of time, Ron said kind of F this. He grabbed the investigative casebook, a few other articles, and took them home.
Oh, wow.
That's good.
Yeah. And
I mean,
so
they were going to shred them anyways.
Yeah.
Like, might as well just take them home.
Exactly. So he kept them with him over his travels for the past 35 years.
Wow.
And that was the basis for which his book was written on. So
That's
he,
super cool.
so
That's
he used
cool.
all of like the case notes and all of the investigative aspects of that to write his book and help the information on that.
That's super cool.
And so his whole thing was that he was ordered to destroy all evidence that showed CSPD involvement. He was not, however, told how to destroy the evidence.
Oh.
So his loophole was that by taking them home, all signs of CSPD's involvement was removed from CSPD files. They were no longer there.
Yeah.
Just as the chief wanted. And he never really lied about it because no one asked him what happened
How
of the
he-
files.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, just semantics. I love it.
Yeah.
He lied by omission. That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah, exactly. And so he kind of at the end, he was like, why did I put my career at risk? Because like for something like this? And like, well, at that point, like, why wouldn't you? Like it was, he saw how unique the investigation was. He understood the importance of the knowledge that he was gaining.
Yeah.
That it was the first to be done of a Black American infiltrating the KKK.
It's pretty
Mhm.
cool. Yeah.
And he wanted physical proof of such an investigation.
Yeah.
Because if
That's
he
so
were to go
fair.
and tell people, they would have been like, cool. Yeah, it didn't actually happen. Thanks, though.
Yeah. Like, prove it.
Yeah. And so he discusses that at the end. And unfortunately, not much happened from that investigation. But 35 plus years later, he was able to come out with that book and come out with that movie and like talk about it. And so that's
really cool.
That's what I've got on the KKK.
That's
Amazing.
super interesting.
Yeah.
That's. Oh, hi.
Hi, Ophi.
Hello.
We have a cat joining us in person.
Oh, you're here to say your spiel. Oh.
She's writing. She wants to write notes.
Wow. Well, that was really interesting,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I still also can't believe that the KKK isn't a terrorist group. Like, we know that they are. They're
They
just
are.
like not listed as one on our government websites.
Yeah, like they're not formally one, and it's interesting because like depending on the source you read, they are described kind of as like a terrorist organization, which makes sense.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like if you ask someone random on the street, like, are the KKK a terrorist organization? They'd probably say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, but I really learned a lot. That was super interesting. I hope we did it justice as 3 white women.
Yeah.
But yeah, super cool. So before we reveal what the next episode is going to be, I know that Journey has a forensic corner for us today.
Yeah, and it is very on theme with this episode
I
because
love
Nicole
that.
helped me find it.
Perfect. Ooh,
Was that lightning?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yes, I love a good
Thunderstorm.
thunderstorm.
This is the first one of the year.
yay!
That's so nice.
Oh, does Ophi know what a thunderstorm is? Yeah, she must.
Yeah, she doesn't really react to them.
I wonder what my kitties are doing with the thunderstorm.
Oh,
We could take Sheraton. They have a babysitter.
We'll talk. Yeah.
Okay, so Home Alone star Donald Trump.
Oh, Home Alone star Trump. Yes, of course.
His father Fred
Yeah.
was arrested in 1927 at a KKK rally.
I'm so unsurprised.
It turned violent in Queens, and so he was arrested on a charge of refusing to disperse from a parade when ordered to do so.
Oh, interesting charge.
Yeah, so he was just like there and wouldn't leave.
Yeah.
He was 21 years old at the time. Brawls had apparently erupted by sympathizers of the Italian fascist movement and the KKK. And so there's this brawl that took place in the Bronx, killing 2 Italian men by anti-fascists. So 1927 Antifa.
Always been around. Just like the KKK.
Exactly. And then 1,000 white-robed Klansmen marched through the Jamaica neighborhood,
Oh my God.
spurring an all-out brawl where 7 men were arrested, and one of those was Donald Trump's father. Fred.
Wow. It's funny. I was actually going to say when you were we were talking about Trump for a second. I was going to say like if this was more prevalent today and Trump wasn't president, like he'd probably be a Klansman.
Yeah, 100%.
Who's to say that he isn't?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it might just be like, because you are a presidential candidate again. You maybe shouldn't advertise that, but like
Yeah.
He denies his father's arrest. I really wish I could do a Trump impression because this is written the exact way that he talks.
God.
Yeah, so it goes, quote, "He was never arrested. He has nothing to do with this. This never happened. This is nonsense and it never happened. This never happened. Never took place. He was never arrested, never convicted, never even charged. It's a completely false, ridiculous story. He was never there. It never happened. Never took place."
Oh my God. Do you think it happened?
Never.
Never
happened.
Oh my
God.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I was like, we love that.
Yeah, I love the way he speaks. I just like the way everyone makes fun of it.
I lose brain cells every time I hear him speak.
I've
It's
never heard him
horrible.
speak. I've only heard people do impressions of him.
You've never seen
And I
videos
love
of
it.
him?
No, I don't watch them because I
Oh.
don't care.
Yeah.
Many
fair.
of the impressions are very accurate.
They're spot on.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and his father was arrested in 1976 as well over code violations at a building that he owned in Maryland, but I don't think that has anything to do with
The
KKK.
KKK.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
interesting though that he was charged with like not leaving when told to do so, but they won't charge Klansmen for being racist assholes
I
for doing the
know.
shit that they do
Yeah.
and like the terror that they cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
and so because only 7 men were arrested.
Yeah.
So then why
Out of the 1,000 however.
1,000 Klansmen that were there? Who knows how many Antifa
Yeah.
fellows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's my forensic corner for you guys.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing because Trump is an ass and
Yep.
his family surely
Runs
must
in
have
the-
been too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Runs in the family.
When you Google his father, it's just like,
Oh boy.
yeah, you're a treat.
Apple
Ew.
doesn't fall far from the tree.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for this really interesting discussion,
Mm-hmm.
all of which has been about the KKK.
Yeah.
So I hope our listeners learned something about them that maybe they didn't before. I hope you still took away that they're horrible people, because they are. But yeah, this has been our episode on the KKK. If you want to keep up with the momentum of these kind of talks on questionable organizations, our next episode coming up in a couple of weeks is going to be about the Freemasons, which I'm really excited for.
Me too, especially because Nicole mentioned them and being tied into the KKK.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't really know anything about the Freemasons, and I still don't. So I'm really curious to learn more, because Journey and I were at a farmer's market this past weekend, and they just have a Masonic building, and like the Freemasons, you can go and
they're
like
huge,
walk in and everything.
Yeah.
I don't understand why, but yeah.
So
where was that farmer's market?
Annapolis Royal.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
their big farmer's market there.
Oh, I
so
bet.
like it's a cool building. Like they have all their antiques, but the two Freemasons, two Masonic buildings I've been in have all been like antique based. So I'm curious to see if that ties into anything.
That's really interesting. Well, I'm super excited to talk about them. I also don't know a lot about them.
Yeah.
But I know like they have a lot of ties to a lot of like ancient mysteries and stuff.
How did I describe them? It was like Illuminati and
KKK.
And the KKK had a baby, I think. I don't know if it was the KKK.
Honestly, wouldn't be surprised. I don't think they're known as being an inherently like bad or racist group, but I know that they do have a bit of a questionable,
they're just
a really cool secret history.
Yeah,
but I know like they probably have their issues that we're gonna discover.
Oh
yeah. But so that's coming up in a couple weeks, so definitely tune in for that. But with that being said, if you've enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook, all at What the Forensics.
And TikTok, I think is What the Forensics too.
Oh, What the Forensics on TikTok as well. That's awesome. And Journey makes some super great videos over there, so definitely check out our TikTok. We do have X or Twitter. We don't use it a lot, but I think we've been talking about ramping it up a little bit again.
I've been posting more for the last 2 episodes. I've been posting what we posted on Facebook and Instagram on X.
Oh, that's amazing. So our X is active again, at least for now. So that's at WT Forensics Pod, because someone took our username.
Well, I was just thinking PC was confusing, and so that way really that fair. People like
No, I understand. Yeah. If someone has the What the Forensics username and would like to kindly give it to us, that would be so nice.
We can get What the Forensic.
Yeah, but it's not the same.
Okay. What the Forensics is too long. That's why we can't get it.
WT Forensics, though, was taken.
Yeah.
I do not remember.
I think WT Forensics was taken.
Yeah. Okay. But to learn about all the sources and the recommendations we've made and the book that Nicole's been talking about, check out our website. It is whattheforensics.ca. You'll also find all the information you want to know about us, all of our previous or upcoming episodes, our forensic corners, and just kind of your one-stop shop for everything What the Forensics. Finally, if you want to contact us, our website also has a contact page, or you could email us at whattheforensics@gmail.com, or just reach out on one of our social medias because we check the messages as well.
Yeah.
But with that being said, please drop us a review or a star rating. I know Spotify doesn't do reviews, which I didn't know.
Oh,
yeah, apparently it's just stars.
Yeah.
5-star that bitch.
Yeah. But yeah, review or rate us wherever you're listening. We really love to read them or see how many stars you've left us. Hopefully it's 5.
Hopefully 5, maybe 4.
Yeah, it helps us out a lot. So that would be really appreciated if y'all could do that. With that being said, this has been another episode of What the Forensics. We really hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time.
Bye! Just a reminder to everyone that we are not professionals in the forensic science field. We are just interested in forensics and want to share what we are learning with our listeners. We're trying to give you the most accurate information, but we are human and can make mistakes. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope to see you next week.